tell you, it's nice to be here with such wonderful people and such a big name. Now, children, I want to give you a few instructions on how to talk. You know, it's getting so that you can't understand what people say anymore because so much slang and all this jazz talk and so forth. You can't tell whether people are asking you a question or are making a statement. For instance, somebody will say to you, "Are you crazy?" Well, that's a question. If they say, "Are you crazy?" Well, that could be, they mean you are, you see. But there's no punctuation with the voice. So what we're going to do is punctuate with the voice so that we can understand what we're saying. I'll show you how to do this here tonight. You folks can all learn it. Now, the period is made like this. Anytime you say something, you put a on the end of it. Now, for example, say you go to work tomorrow morning and the boss calls you in the office and chews you out about something. As you leave the office, you turn around and say, "I'll see you later, boss." You see, that way he'll know he'll know what you mean. He'll know what you mean, and you can get a job somewhere anyhow, maybe. But that's the period. Now, don't forget how to make it. At the end of every sentence. Now, the comma is nothing in the world but a little a period with a little tail on it. And you thought of that. I didn't. Now, here's the way you make the comma. Then we have the semicolon, which is a combination of the period and the comma. Here's the way you make the semicolon. Then we have the colon, which is nothing in the world but two periods, one on top of the other one, or one on the bottom of the other one. Makes no difference. You can do it either way because either one's all right. Here is the way you make the colon. Left-handed upside down. That's the colon. Then we have the dash. You know, the dash is nothing in the world but a little straight mark. But here's the way you make it with your voice. If you want to make that backwards, you do it like this. That's the dash. And then we have the question mark. You know, the question mark circles around a half circle, comes straight down, got a period on the bottom. Here's the way you make the question mark. And we have the exclamation point. The exclamation point, it's big at the top, comes down to a point, and it's got a period on the bottom. Now, here's the way you make the exclamation point. Backwards. I have a little story here that I'm going to read for you now and show you how this sounds when it's put into use. It's a beautiful little story, and the title of it is "Meet Me in the Alley at Midnight." Signed, wait a minute, it's the wrong one. I'm going to read this and show you how it sounds when it's put into use. And here we go, punctuated from one end to the other. Once upon a time, there was a brave young prince. He lived in a beautiful castle high on a hill. One day, he was going through the forest with his horse, dog, and carriage. Then from out of the underbrush, there appeared before him a beautiful maiden. He thought, should he speak to her first? And then she says, "I am lost in the forest and need food and drink." So he took her to his castle, they got married, and lived happily ever afterwards. I mean... Thank you, friends, very much. Appreciate that outburst of enthusiasm. And I'd like to say that what this country needs is institution, constitution, and prosperity. I'm seriously concerned about this unemployment problem, and I know Red is, because you read so much about it in the papers and everything. Bink has it on TV there. It's terrible. Unemployment problem, they've got it built up to the point that it's got everybody worried. Think we're going to starve to death. But I'll tell you that there's not near as many people out of work as you might think. They're not working, but they don't care. They don't need to work. They got it made anyhow. I was up in Washington the other day, and I walked right in the White House and got things straightened out. I walked right into the White House, and I says, listen here, John. John Loudermilk. He's the janitor up there. But we had it all figured out, and I can explain to you in 1 minute just what the problem is. Now, there's 180 million people approximately in this United States. We've got it figured at the present time, not counting those that happened over the weekend. But of that 180 million people, 72 of those are 60 years of age or over. So you can't expect them to work. Most of them are in Florida. And they're having a ball. You can't blame them. Well, now 72 from 180 leaves 108 million people to do all the work. Now 64 million of those are under 21 years of age. Well, now they don't work. They're either going to school or they're draft age, and they barely have enough money to buy comedy albums. Well, now 64 from 108 leaves 44 million people to do all the work. Now 21 million of these people are employed by the government. Well, you don't expect them to work. They barely have... They just barely have time to get in an afternoon to touch football. Now 21 from 44 leaves 23 million people to do all the work. And there's 10 million in the armed forces. Well, it takes all their time hiding from the officers. That leaves 13 million to do all the work. Now there's 12,800,000 that are in state, county, and city offices. And they can't do any work. It takes all their time figuring out a tax to keep us broke. That leaves 200,000 people to do all the work. Well, now there's 126,000 in hospitals, laying there flat on their back, all tied up with Pal Petey the Punk. Different viruses and so forth, all of them X. But that leaves 74,000 people to do all the work. Now there's 62,000 of those that are just bums, songwriters, guitar players, and people like that. Well, they don't work. And that leaves 12,000 people to do all the work. Now, believe it or not, there is 11,998 people in jail. And that leaves just 2 people to do all the work. And that's me and you, brother, and I'm getting tired of doing it all by myself. I went down here to a department store the other day, and I'd been getting some presents and so forth from my many thousands of fans. And, all right, Johnny. And I wanted to exchange some of them, so I went up this window and I asked the girl there, I said, is this the exchange department? She said, yes, it is. I said, well, do you exchange anything? And she said, brother, we exchange anything. So I thought I'd just run a little test on her. And she was sure that she could exchange anything. And I said, well, I got a wife that's 40. Could you exchange her for 2 20s? She said, yeah, we could do that all right, but I can tell by looking at you that you're not wired for 220. But how do y'all like to play some knock knock? I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll say knock knock and y'all, you know how to do your part. Or do you?
No.
Oh, we'll find out. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Eater.
Eater.
Eater bunny. Knock knock.
Come in.
Early.
Early.
Early eater bunny. Knock knock. Nutter. Nutter early eater bunny. Knock knock. Old lady. Got a whole house full of yodelers here. You know why the baker quit making donuts? He got tired of the whole business. You know what the donut said to the birthday cake? Y'all say, no, what did the donut say to the birthday cake? It said if I had all your dough, I wouldn't be hanging around this hole. I want to tell you about two boys that I knew up in Bull's Gap. They knew each other so well that anytime they met each other on the street, one of them would ask the other one a question, and before it was finished, he'd know what the answer was, so he'd just go ahead and answer it. I'll take both parts. Say, boy, didn't I see you sneaking down to my gal's house last night? What's your gal's name? My gal's name is Nossa. I don't even know her. Where does she live? She lives down the street across from... Man, she couldn't live there. That's where my gal lives. Well, what time did you get there? Oh, I got there around about... Well, I just left. Well, where was you going? I was going to see the doctor. That's just the trouble with you. Here lately you look like you was all... That's just the way I feel, too. Well, what doctor did you go see? I went to see old Doc. Man, he ain't no good. What you ought to done is gone on down the street to see old Doc. No, man, he's a horse doctor. Ain't no use you wasting your money on doctors anyhow. All you got to do is go down here to the drugstore and get you a whole handful of these little... Man, I took a bunch of them things one time and they made me... They'll do it every time. I ain't felt good since I drove out west last summer. Drove out? What kind of car you got? I got a brand new... Man, I wouldn't have one of them things. Why, they won't even hold it. Yes, they will, too. What route did you take? I went around by... Man, you oughtn't done that. What you ought to done was cut through by... You can't get through that way. I don't know where I mentioned this earlier or not, but I'm certainly glad to see so many beautiful women here tonight. Boy, they really are pretty. And I love women. I've always leaned toward women. And their husbands keep pushing me back. But I've always liked them. I used to like little girls. In fact, I started liking little girls as soon as I found out they wasn't little boys. You cannot trust these women. I hate to have to say that, Leona, but you can't. You can't trust these women. I'll tell you what you can do. You can kiss your wife goodbye at the front door in the morning. She'll go straight to the back door and kiss another man good morning.
That's right, brother.
There's a man been working both doors. But now, speaking of women, you take my wife, anybody. Any reasonable offer will not be turned down. There's the War Department in bloomers. She's a mighty fine woman, though. I told her the other day, sitting there in the living room, me and her just jawing and carrying on, and I said, honey, get something on the radio. And she took it out and pawned it. And I get aggravated. I told her the other day, I said, we can do without women. We don't even need women. She said, well, you certainly do. And I said, no, we can do without them altogether. She said, well, now, who would do your cooking if it wasn't for women? I said, well, I'd go eat in a restaurant. She said, well, if it wasn't for women, who'd do your washing and ironing? I said, send it to the laundry. She said, all right, Smarty, I got you now. If it wasn't for women, who'd sew the buttons on your breeches? I said, if it wasn't for you women, we wouldn't have to wear no breeches. I guess you know the new styles that are coming out this coming season. The sack dress is come and gone, but this year it's worse than ever. They're going to make dresses out of wood. My wife already has a sycamore blouse and a white oak skirt. But there's one thing I think they ought to outlaw if they're going to make dresses out of wood, and that's that knotty pine dress. Now, just suppose a young lady is walking down the main street of Bull's Gap and a knothole falls out. I'll tell you, old B, I think it ought to be looked into. I was down in Nashville the other night. I went to one of these real fancy parties, and they had all the girls were really dressed up, and I walked up and introduced myself to one of these girls, and I told her, I said, that's a beautiful dress you almost have on. But it's a beautiful gownless evening strap. But I'll tell you, all those women had on those low-cut dresses, and I'm against those things, really. No, I'll tell you seriously, I look down on those things. I went home the other night and my wife looked on my coat sleeve. I went home the other night and I looked on my coat sleeve and there was a red hair on it. My wife started bawling and squalling and going on. And I said, what's wrong? She said, you've been going out with redheads. Then the next night I came home, she found a blonde hair on my coat. She started bawling again. She said, now you're going out with blondes. So the next night I was a little careful. I was tired of getting caught. So, I checked myself real good, and there wasn't a hair on my coat anywhere. She still inspected me. She looked it all over real good, and she started bawling again. I said, well, what on earth's wrong this time? She said, now it's worse than ever. You're going out with bald-headed women.